Guys, I'm slipping. I'm losing my edge. You know I used to do this series every month, and now look at me. 3 months just passed. I know it sucks, but if it makes you feel any better, I can promise you that the next one is gonna take even longer. Demos are up first. Ding dong, what's that? Oh, it's the Crowsworn Demo. Don't be shy, let him in. Oh wait, you can't. It's backers only, nerd. Sucks for you too, because this thing's awesome. This demo is made up of cut content that won't be in the final release, so there are a few moments where you'll run into weird dead ends, and we haven't seen the full capability of the level design yet, but besides that, I got no notes. It looks great, it feels great. I know there's so many abilities and bosses and secrets that aren't here, some of which you got to play around with in last year's demo, and knowing that's coming is even more exciting. As far as core combat goes, like how many options you have in combat, how crunchy that combat feels, even the way the jump works, I'd actually say I prefer what I've played of Crowsworn to Hollow Knight, and I love Hollow Knight. Obviously there's so much more that makes that game amazing, its story, atmosphere, variety, challenges, etc., and we don't know how that's going to shape out for Crowsworn just yet, but gameplay wise it's already exceeding the bar I set for it in my head. I also don't want to necessarily pit these two against each other, but it's hard not to use Hollow Knight as a litmus test for Crowsworn, and the fact that it's holding up so far should be celebrated. I'm excited to see this game finally release, hopefully next year, but I'm willing to wait because it feels really special. I played Radio of the Universe's demo, finally, should have gotten to that a long time ago, and surprise, it's fantastic. It gave me a lot of the same grungy, dark, unsettling energy as Signalis' demo, with more mobility and action, which is more my speed. There are a lot of small systems here that I really like for example, different attacks have you deal different levels of damage, and each enemy displays their exact health above their heads, and if you plan your attacks to knock their health down to exactly 0, you get rewarded with more XP. This sort of balances reflexes and strategy in real time, and it's so simple, but it completely alters the flow of combat. I feel like a lot of games like this sort of opt to hold back on the gameplay department. They try and rein it in and deliver on that slow, weighty gameplay loop. But here you're a little bit faster, a little more fluid, and there's less restrictions on your weapons. It truly feels equal parts action-adventure and creepy horror instead of some compromise between the two. This game's development is something that really interests me. I've actually been planning on doing a full video on how this game progressed over its decade plus in development. I keep having to push that video back for one reason or another, but there's a lot more to cover with Radio of the Universe. Someday soon, I guess, you'll see me get into it all, but for now, check out the demo, you won't regret it. Most of the other demos I played during this time I talked about in this other video, but as a recap, On Guard, really fun. I like its playful spin on timing-based group combat. It actually released earlier this month to great reception, so check it out. Like Age Through Blood is something that I enjoyed a lot, but I don't know how it's gonna scale. It seems like something that might not hold its charm over, say, 8 to 12 hours, but the overall concept and art design has me hooked. And Echo Point Nova is just a fast-paced shooter fan's wet dream. It's got so many movement options and wonky level design, and just feels like a really goofy shooter sandbox. I also played a little bit more of Have a Nice Death, which is still great, big thumbs up. I would once again recommend that to anybody who enjoys roguelikes, especially Dead Cells. And I played the first few hours of Hack, which is a Metroidvania that doesn't get too much mainstream coverage, but the Metroidvania subreddit is really high on it. And from the early sections, I can already tell why. The combat is fluid, it doesn't beat around the bush, the controls are simple, it just felt like an easy game to get into. I'll have updates on this one once I get farther into it. Across the Spider-Verse. That's how long it's been since I made one of these. I still haven't talked about Across the Spider-Verse. I mean, what do I say here? What do you expect? Who's gonna call this a bad movie? Everyone I talk to, apparently. I think I'm surrounded by the only people in the world who don't like this movie. I don't know how it happened, but people I run into keep having harsh criticisms, and I always walk away so confused. Like, are we from the same planet? What's going on? Is somebody coordinating the most organized prank of all time? Like, clearly the movie's received resoundingly positive feedback, so I don't know what lab these Spider-Verse haters are being engineered in, but it seems like the main complaints they have are that the movie is too messy and convoluted, and the writing has taken a nosedive from the first one. Now, on that first point, I gotta say, to be completely honest, I have no idea where that's coming from. I thought it was really easy to follow, and most things made logical sense. There were 1 or 2 moments with weird continuity where it felt like, oh, I'm surprised we jumped straight to this scene right after that last one. How exactly did we get here? But that was less for multiversal stuff and more like, why did Miles decide to bring Gwen back to his dad's party after he stormed out? That's kind of weird. And as for the second point about the writing, particularly the sometimes easy, cheap humor, here's how I see it. 50 to 60% of the jokes in this movie were fun and creative. I think a lot of this movie is genuinely hilarious. Another 30 to 40% were kind of stupid and quippy, but in a way that a Spider-Man movie is contractually obligated to be. I mean, I know a lot of Hollywood has co-opted this style for one reason or another, but it was always core to Spider-Man humor. If you're gonna go watch a Spider-Man movie, you should expect dumb quips. And then like 10% was kind of cheap, overused, underthought BS that people are really latching onto. If this movie came out a few years ago before people really blew their lids about that kind of writing style, I think it would have gotten a pass on that front. In fact, I think that Into the Spider-Verse got a pass for that exact reason. But even now, as it stands, it's such an incredibly small portion of the jokes in the movie to me, and everything else about it is so unbelievably incredible. The acting, the visuals, the score, the visuals, the action, the visuals. Guys, this movie looks really good. That I sort of just see this as a nitpick that's been blown out of proportion. Anyways, that was me defending a movie that got a 95% on Rotten Tomatoes. I watched 30 minutes of Secret Invasion, and then I stopped because I realized I didn't give a shit. And then I rewatched Chernobyl, and this is just one of the best written things I've ever seen. And I'm not just talking about the dialogue, I'm talking about how it delivers information to you. It explores the fallout of the Chernobyl disaster with such an expertly crafted timeline where you never feel like you know everything, but you also never feel like you know nothing. Sometimes you put bigger questions aside to focus on something more pressing that's come up, and other times you get to see how those questions might actually be answered. The show keeps you hooked, but not necessarily by relying on withholding information. Sometimes other information is just more important for the time being. The way the show depicts the ramifications of the event and all the ways it could have been even worse is honestly shocking. There are a lot of points where if I didn't know this was based on true events, my suspension of disbelief would have been out the window. It's such an unbelievable story that I honestly can't even wrap my head around the fact that it happened on Earth. This feels like an Avengers level threat that gets soloed by Professor Legasov. It's 5 episodes, you have no excuses, watch the show. And last up for this interlude, I read Why the Last Man, which is one of the more talked about independent comics out there. Honestly, at first I didn't really like it. It felt kind of male fantasy-y, and I thought the lead character and Brian K. Vaughan, the author, were pretending like there was a deeper meaning behind their very shallow mentality. But I guess he had me fooled, because at some point around a fifth of the way through the series, I realized that a lot of what happened till this point actually did have a rhyme and reason to it, and there was a sort of second hidden layer that I wasn't gonna get credit for because I was so caught up with what was on the surface. I wound up liking it quite a bit, although I never really developed a strong affection for most of the characters. Maybe I'm weird, maybe people like the main cast here, but I was never all that invested in them. I was invested in the world around them and the things they were doing. The ending's also a little bit rushed at points. Some things happen to tie up loose ends that could have just been left loose, but credit where it's due, it's an interesting concept about what it would be like to be the last man on Earth. It was definitely entertaining throughout, it's just got some rough edges that I wasn't expecting. I'm about halfway done Atomic Heart, and I think this might be where I leave it. That's not to say it's necessarily bad. I actually like a lot of what this game does, and for all the things it could have been, this is far from the worst case scenario, but it's also far from the best. Now, I'd heard this scuttlebutt that this game was kind of disjointed and didn't have a clear direction, and I was curious what people meant by that, and then I played it, and I felt it. I would describe this game as having big, student who's doing incredible work and then looks down to see that their assignment is due in 5 minutes energy. It was like they made a bunch of discrete sections of the game and they were great on their own, and then a day before launch they were like, oh shit, we gotta actually put this together somehow. Put an open world around it, toss in some cameras, send these things after you, submit. Perfect. I just felt like I was doing things for the sake of it, and because I took a break in playing it to play something else for a while, that lack of cohesion meant that I was never convinced to come back. I'm like not excited to know what comes next. The main character is a little bit much, but I knew that going in. I was just trying to enjoy the combat, the art, the world, and the powers, and I did. I enjoyed playing through this game basically at all times. It's a pretty good Bioshock-inspired shooter. Interiors look nice, your list of powers is smaller than I thought it would be, but they really let you juice them up quite a bit, and all the weird robots and puzzles were awesome. But I'm good now, I think. Remember that for non-demos, I do have a little review scale that I use for these videos. You probably forgot because the last one came out in like 600 BC, but this one is up in the air. You can really get a lot out of it, but it doesn't always give you a reason to. A Hat in Time is a rare breed of game. It's a modern 3D collectathon platformer with no IP recognition. It uses a formula that the industry had sucked dry and thrown out 15 years ago, but somehow that one little droplet that was left in there made its way into this game. It's really simple to play, but it's so much bigger and has so much more variety than you'd think at first glance. Levels aren't just thematically different in terms of their layout and environments, sometimes they're different in their controls and the game's overall structure. You have a classic little city to explore first, which flares out into an interconnected web of floating islands, but then you go to another world and you're a famous movie star and your platforming is tied to gaining popularity, or you get sent to the Orient Express and have to solve a mysterious murder. Plus you also get access to all these little hats that give you different abilities when equipped. It's never the most challenging game or the most robust platforming experience, it's just full of ideas and charm. Put it at the top of of your wishlist if you're looking for a nice, chill platformer, or a co-op game, because it does have a co-op feature. Speaking of co-op, I played Portal 2's co-op mode, which I've never actually tried before. Now you guys know me, I'm RizMaster69, and my main move is to immediately show girls how much smarter I am than them. That's why every first date I've been on has been to a high-intensity escape room, and every second date I've been on is yet to happen. And so I asked my friend to play Portal 2 with me because I wanted to show her what she's really missing out on, you know? So we booted up the game, went in, did some puzzles, and she was way better at Portal than I was. This mode is great though. I can't believe it took me this long to get to it. The puzzles require teamwork and coordination, especially as you get farther into it, but honestly it didn't require as much energy as I thought it would. You're able to like chill out, have a conversation, and solve some puzzles with some basic communication in the meantime. Besides a few that definitely stumped us, but then it was nice to just experiment with different solutions till somebody had a eureka moment. I could definitely see this being a frustrating experience if one of the two of you really sucks at puzzles, but if you get two people that at least somewhat know what they're doing, it's a great time. And I mean, if we're talking puzzle games, it really doesn't get as good as Portal 2, right? Pinnacle of the genre. Yeah, that wasn't a joke in the other video. I actually did buy Tears of the Kingdom, even though I never got the hype behind Breath of the Wild. I really thought there was a chance I wasn't gonna like this, or maybe I'd lose interest after the first few hours, but for a little while there, I was fully addicted. And I was playing it in a way that I never play games. I think I did like one main mission, and then I just sort of wandered around looking for stuff. I thought people who did that were just trying to seem artsy or something, like, okay, we get it, you're not like other gamers, you go off the beaten path, but damn it, they were right, this is a lot of fun. I'm still only like 3 main missions in, and I definitely have at least 30 hours so far. I see myself hopping in and out of this one for a long time. I have so many shrines to do, so many places in the depths and the sky to explore, actual story to see, outfits to collect. I feel like I'm just scratching the surface of what this game has to offer, and I've grown really fond of its little niche as a game that's a weird blend of really chill, but also really action-packed. I don't really get sick of playing this game, which is nice. I just wish that I had more time nowadays to really pull out longer game sessions. You guys converted me, okay? This is at the pinnacle of its genre as well. Austin and Utopia came out on the same day, and Melon got them switched. I've really been enjoying Austin. I think it's a lot tighter both tonally and writing-wise than 12 Karat Toothache, and maybe it's not doing anything new for the genre that Post Malone's gradually moved into here, but like, everything he makes is catchy as hell. Even songs that I thought were a little bit dry or boring at first have grown on me quite a bit. There's only like 1 or 2 on here that I tend to skip when listening, and those are generally some of the slower ones. What can I say, alright? I'm a basic bitch. If the chorus is catchy, me likey. What do you want? Utopia is a lot more experimental and took a little longer to come together for me as a whole. I really like the first leg of this album, basically until Sirens, but then it starts getting kind of forgettable to me, which is weird because that's when the features really kick off, which should shake things up a bit. There are some decent songs later in the track list, but nothing that hits as hard or feels as weird or is as consistent as the first third or so. As far as the best feature, I would say SZA on Telekinesis, and as far as the worst feature, I would say 21 on Topia Twins. I don't know if it's just me, but that is one of the worst verses from an otherwise pretty consistent artist that I've heard in a while. At one point he gets dangerously close to a Jake Paul flow. You just never want to be seeing that. Oppenheimer is a sequel to 12 Angry Men, and this time they're angry at Japan. In some ways this movie is very un-Nolan. The most exciting thing about it is its characters, which... What? Name one character in any of his movies before this. Yeah, Green Lantern? See, it's impossible. It also doesn't feature any action really, and it's got boobies. Mr. Nolan, you sly dog. But in other ways it feels very Nolan. The score is a huge part of this movie, all the effects feel tangible because he's allergic to CGI, and he even throws his time manipulation tricks into this one too. This man has never seen a straight line in his life. Oppenheimer is one of the most unconventional blockbusters ever made. It has one of the most insane casts ever, ranging from some of the industry's most accomplished actors to Roderick Heffley. What the fuck? And it doesn't even spend most of its time on what you would assume is the most exciting part of all of this, the bomb. It's more concerned about Oppenheimer's political beliefs, his relationships, his flaws, his regrets, and I think that was a really nice surprise. This movie wasn't what I was expecting exactly, but I really like where we ended up. The last 4 games on this list I sort of talked about in this other video, but not exactly in a review sense, so I guess now's the perfect time to do that. Final Fantasy XVI is a very good game that could have been even better if they just knew how to cut it down a little. So many cutscenes could be cut or shortened considerably. Not that they were in themselves bad, but eventually all the fluff adds up and the pacing really suffers. Especially because Creative Business Unit 3 has apparently never heard of falling action and immediately follows up the coolest thing you've ever done in your life with a 3-hour-long fetch quest with a character named Mid. That kind of stuff happens happens throughout the entire game. I really do like the combat and how it evolves as you get further into the game. I was a little bit worried about how straightforward it felt during the opening hours, but the middle and end do a good job of having a low barrier for entry, but a decent skill ceiling. And then obviously the production level, the bosses, all the icon battles, it goes without saying that that's some elite level stuff. I loved it. I just wish that the game wouldn't kneecap itself so often, because some of what it tried to do feels so outdated and out of place for an otherwise amazing experience. I would still put it at the top of your wishlist though if you haven't played it, because when it's firing on all cylinders, it is one of the most enjoyable games I've maybe ever played. You just have to be willing to hang through some frustratingly slow pacing and bad side quests in the meantime. Unpacking is the perfect chill out game. It's easy to follow the embedded narrative that it tells through unpacking boxes at different stages of your character's life, and there's so many small systems in place to make it a hassle-free experience where you just unpack your stuff into a bunch of different rooms and make it all look nice. One thing I actually kind of love doing when I move is designing new setups for my room, especially if I'm bringing a lot of memorabilia or decorations. I just like seeing what I can do with a new space, so I loved being able to do that all without the logistical issues that you run into in real life. It was also low effort enough to actually play on the go, which is something that I don't always do with my Switch, weirdly enough. I think this is a game that everyone should consider getting to eventually. The only reason I don't bump this up is because I think it's a game for specific moods or circumstances, like as a wind down game or something, so you don't necessarily have to go and get it right now. In sort of a similar boat is Birth, which was the inspiration for that other video I mentioned, and that's one of my favorite videos that I've ever made, so if you haven't seen it, go check it out. This was a really nice palate cleanser after Final Fantasy. I actually enjoyed the quiet, simple nature of it instead of being annoyed by it like I was in Final Fantasy, and that really made me pay attention to how it designed those elements in a way that was still fun for the player. For people who didn't watch the video, Birth is a short point and click game with simple puzzles, great art, a sort of moody atmosphere, and a lot of hidden details. It's short, it's easy, it's fun. It's a shame that it likely won't get the recognition it deserves this year with how stupidly good games have already been with even more on the horizon, but if you have an hour or two to kill and are just trying to take it easy, you should give this game a go. Definitely get to it eventually. And finally, Windosill, which I'll be showing almost no footage of because it's like half an hour long and I don't want to spoil the puzzles. I think this is such a fun concept. You just kind of mess around with a bunch of items in a box until you realize how to string them together to solve a puzzle, and then you move on to the next room and do it again. It's got a bunch of weird little quirks and unorthodox solutions, and I kind of want to take my own shot at making something like this, maybe for a small dev project or something, I don't know. It's dirt cheap, so you should definitely find the time to get to it eventually. It is a really unique little game. I know that list doesn't seem very long for all of summer, especially considering some of the older videos in this series, but I was insanely busy during this time, which is also why I couldn't justify doing this monthly anymore. I wasn't gonna just put out a video with 3 games in it. In all seriousness, I don't know when the next roundup like this is gonna happen. I wish I could keep it up monthly, but it's just not possible with my current schedule. But I still want to check in every so often, so let me know what you guys played this summer, what you're looking forward to. If you enjoyed this video, leave it a like. If you're new here, subscribe, join the Discord, and I'll see you all next time. Peace.